When I was 16, I thought love could fix anything. I believed that if I studied harder, smiled wider, and obeyed every word my father said, he might finally look at me like a daughter instead of an inconvenience. But love, I learned, is not a currency you can earn. It's either given freely or not at all. The day everything changed, a letter came. Plain white envelope. My name written in his perfect hand, writing clean, sharp, and cold. Inside, just 2 words. Stay away. No greeting. No signature. No reason. Just that command. I stared at it for so long that the ink almost blurred from the tears I refused to shed. Those 2 words didn't just reject me, they erased me. My hands trembled as I typed back 1 word. Understood. That night, I packed my small blue suitcase, the same one my mom had bought me for school trips, and I left. No goodbye. No noise. Just silence. The house that had never been home disappeared behind me, swallowed by the dark. For years, I told myself I'd moved on. I worked 2 jobs, studied hard, and built a life out of nothing. Every achievement, every milestone, every piece of success became armor-proof that I could survive without him. But deep down, a quiet ache remained. I never deleted his number, never blocked him. It sat there in my phone under the name Dad, like a scar I couldn't cut off. 12 years later, my phone buzzed again. The message was short, 3 words this time. Your mother's gone. I read it over and over, numb. No, how are you? No, please come home. Just a notification of death from the man who'd told me to disappear. I hadn't seen my mother since the day I left, but I still remembered her hands soft, trembling, always busy doing something to keep the peace. She was the quiet shadow in his storm. Without thinking, I booked the first flight home. When I reached the old house, it looked smaller, older. Paint peeled off the porch, the grass was overgrown, and the windows were clouded with dust. But inside, everything was the same. My father sat in his leather armchair, still wearing that same expression of tired authority. The TV was on, volume low, some political show playing in the background. He looked up when he saw me, eyes scanning my face like a document. You came, he said flatly. She'd want you here. I swallowed the anger that rose in my throat. When's the funeral? I asked quietly. He turned back to the TV. Already done. My voice cracked. You buried her without me. He didn't even flinch. She didn't want a scene. A scene. That's what he called my presence. My mother's death had been an event, and I was an unwanted guest. I walked past him to the living room. Her picture sat on the mantel, gold frame, old photo, her smile so soft it broke my heart. No flowers, no candles, just dust. That night, I couldn't sleep. I rented a small room in a cheap motel outside town. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of 12 years pressing down on my chest. Grief and rage mixed into something heavier, something colder. He had taken everything from me. My childhood, my mother, even the right to say goodbye. But I wasn't 16 anymore, and this time I wouldn't stay away. The next morning, I went to the lawyer who handled my mother's estate. He looked uncomfortable when I introduced myself. Your father already handled all the paperwork, he said. Everything's in his name now. My stomach turned. Everything. Yes, the house, her savings. She didn't have much left, but it's all settled. I frowned. Wasn't there a will? He hesitated, eyes darting to a drawer. She signed one years ago. Your father said she changed her mind before she passed. Can I see it? I asked. He sighed and handed me a copy. My hands shook as I read. The signature at the bottom was weak, unsteady. But the handwriting under witness was unmistakable, my father's. He had forged it. I left the office with my mind spinning. My mother had always trusted him, even when she shouldn't have. He had controlled her, isolated her, made her believe she had no one else. Now, even in death, he'd stolen her last word. That night, I drove around town, retracing old roads, stopping by places I hadn't seen in years. I talked to neighbors, old friends, anyone who might remember my parents. Slowly, a pattern formed, one of fear and silence. My mother had been sick for years, but he'd hidden it. Never let her see a doctor alone. Never told anyone. One old neighbor, Mrs. Holt, looked at me with pity. She used to sit by the window every Sunday, she said. Said you were coming? She'd wait all day. We thought you stopped caring. I throat burned. I wrote to her, I whispered. Every week. Mrs. Holt frowned. Then why didn't she get them? I didn't answer. I already knew. He had intercepted every letter, every message, every piece of hope that could have reached her. He'd made her believe I'd abandoned her, just like he made me believe she didn't want me. Sitting in my car that night, watching the lights flicker in the house I used to call home, I realized something terrifying and liberating. The man inside had destroyed everything soft in me, but he had also created something stronger. The girl who once obeyed him was gone, and the woman who replaced her had nothing left to lose. I looked at the window where his shadow moved behind the curtain and whispered to myself, "You told me to stay away. Now I'm here to finish what you started." Woke before dawn. The world outside still gray and half asleep, but my mind was burning. Every lie my father ever told echoed in my head, stitching itself into a plan. Revenge, I realized, didn't always wear fangs or carry fire. Sometimes it wore patience like perfume. I didn't want to destroy him quickly. I wanted him to crumble under the weight of his own sins. To do that, I needed to understand everything, every secret, every missing piece of my mother's story. I started with her old things. At the house, my father still left everything in its place, like she might walk back in any second. Her sewing machine sat in the corner, covered with a sheet. Her books were still on the shelf. Her perfume bottle half full. I waited until he went to town for groceries, then unlocked her room with a hairpin. It smelled like lavender and dust. I searched for hours, opening drawers, lifting floorboards, flipping through photo albums until I found something that made my heart stop. A small wooden box hidden behind old clothes in the closet. Inside were letters tied with a blue ribbon. My letters. Every one I had sent over the years, unopened. Some were yellowed, some still crisp, all bearing my handwriting. On top of them was a folded piece of paper, my mother's handwriting, shaky but unmistakable. I unfolded it carefully. If you're reading this, he's gone too far. I tried to protect you, but I was weak. He read your letters. He said you hated me. I wanted to believe him because believing otherwise meant facing the truth. I'm sorry, my little girl. You were always my light. Don't let him take your heart too. The words blurred as tears filled my eyes. My mother had never stopped loving me. She'd just been trapped, caged by his manipulation and fear. That realization didn't heal me. It ignited me. I folded the note and placed it in my pocket like armor. That night, I went to see someone who might know more. Mark, my father's old business partner. He ran a hardware store now, hunched and tired. When I mentioned my father's name, he flinched. Haven't heard from him in years, he said quickly. I studied his face. You were partners for 20 years. You must know something. He hesitated, then sighed. He was good at hiding things. Your mother came here once, years back. Asked about money, said she couldn't find the savings. I told her to talk to him. A week later, she stopped coming. My heart sank. Money? What money? He shrugged. Ask the bank. Just be careful. He's not the man people think he is. The next morning, I went to the bank listed on one of the old statements I found in the box. When the manager checked the records, his brow furrowed. "Your mother had an account," he said, "but it was emptied 12 years ago." I didn't go back to the motel that night. I parked across the street from the house and sat in the car with the engine off. Watching the light in his study burn late into the night, I could almost imagine him pacing, replaying my words. Realizing that the control he had carried for decades was slipping like sand through his fingers. The next morning, I woke to find my phone buzzing. Unknown number. "You think you can destroy me?" His voice snapped as soon as I answered. "After everything I've done for you?" I didn't reply. He continued, louder, "You'll regret this, girl. You're still nothing without me." Then the call cut. For a second, I felt the familiar chill of fear, but it passed quickly. I wasn't that frightened girl anymore. He didn't scare me. Not anymore. I drove to town, met with my lawyer, and handed over everything: photos, statements, my mother's note, everything. She said quietly, "Once this is filed, there's no turning back." I nodded. Good. It took 3 days for the first letter to reach him. A formal notice of investigation. I imagined his face when he opened it. The shock, the disbelief. The man who thought himself untouchable was finally being touched by the truth. I didn't stop there. I visited the local paper, gave them the documents anonymously. Within a week, whispers began spreading about forged wills, stolen funds, emotional abuse. He started getting calls, visits, stares from neighbors who had once admired him. His empire of silence was collapsing. But justice doesn't always move cleanly. One evening, I found my motel door ajar. Inside, drawers pulled open, papers scattered. I froze, scanning the room. Then I saw Ita letter on the bed, my name written in his sharp handwriting. "Stop before it's too late." That was all it said. No signature. No explanation. Just another command. I smiled, not with amusement, but with a kind of calm fury. He still thought he could order me. Still thought he had power. I tore the letter in half and flushed it down the sink. The next day, I called the police and filed a report. I wanted it documented everything. I wasn't running this time. 2 weeks later, the investigation went public. My father's accounts were frozen, the house was listed for seizure, and his forged documents were exposed. I stood across the street watching as 2 officers arrived at the door. He opened it, old but still proud, pretending nothing was wrong. But when they handed him the papers, I saw it the crack. The disbelief melting into fear. The control he'd built his whole life around vanished in an instant. He looked up and saw me standing there. For a long moment, neither of us moved. Then he stepped forward, voice low, almost trembling. "You did this." I met his eyes. "You did this to yourself." His jaw clenched. "You're just like her, weak." I took a deep breath, then said, "If strength means living with your lies, then I'd rather be weak forever." He turned away, slamming the door behind him. I didn't follow. That was the last time I ever saw him. Months passed. The legal process moved slowly but steadily. The property was sold and part of the proceeds were used to restore my mother's name. Legally, her will reinstated. Her accounts revalidated. It wasn't about money anymore. It was about truth. One afternoon, I returned to the house one last time. It was empty now, stripped bare. The furniture gone, the curtains pulled down, the walls echoing with ghosts. I walked through each room, touching the faded wallpaper, the windows, the places where laughter had once been a dream. In my mother's room, I placed her note, the one I'd carried in my pocket for months, on the windowsill. "You were right," I whispered. "He did go too far. But he doesn't get to win this time." I stood there until the sun began to set, the golden light spilling across the floor like a quiet apology from the past. For the first time, I felt peace, not because I had destroyed him, but because I had finally freed both of us from the silence he built. Before leaving, I found one last thing, a photograph tucked behind the mirror. It was old, faded. My mother holding me as a baby, smiling softly, her eyes bright. My father stood beside her, distant even then. I slipped the photo into my bag and walked out, closing the door behind me. No tears this time. Just release. The next morning, my lawyer called. He's leaving town, she said. Sold what little he had left. He's gone. I didn't ask where. I didn't need to know. Let him live in the shadows he created. I owed him nothing, not even hatred. A year later, I stood by my mother's grave, a small bouquet of white lilies in my hand. The stone was simple, newly carved, her name finely spelled right. The dates correct. I traced the engraving with my fingers. I wish you could see it, Mom, I whispered. Your truth finally matters. The wind rustled through the trees, soft and steady, and for a moment, I could almost feel her presence beside me. Warm, proud, free as I turned to leave. I noticed something at the edge of the cemetery. A man sitting on a bench, gray hair, familiar build. He didn't look at me, but I knew. My father, older, smaller, broken. For a brief moment, our eyes met across the distance. There was no anger in his gaze now, only regret. He opened his mouth as if to speak, but I shook my head gently. No more words, I mouthed. Then I walked away, not looking back. That was the real revenge, not his ruin, but my freedom. He would live with the truth he tried so hard to bury. I would live with the peace he could never understand. Years later, I framed the photograph I'd found, placing it on my desk at home. My mother, smiling, me in her arms. Beside it, a small folded note, the one she left me. I never showed it to anyone. It was my reminder of everything I survived. Sometimes, at night, I still hear echoes of his voice telling me to stay away. But now, I smile. Because I finally understand. Staying away was never running. It was reclaiming my life. And in the silence he once used to control me, I finally found my strength.